Hey, what's
Yeah.
up, Tim? You know what? I guess this is actually a war.
It is now. And Joaquin, I can't believe it. After all these years of sort of Russia monitoring and seeing Russia generally sort of bend over backwards or try to go back to the negotiating table, I for one didn't see this coming. So I guess I'm a bad Russia watcher. I'm bad at my profession. I don't know, but I really expected Russia to back down. But I guess when push comes to shove, something
Hmm.
here is a little bit different. It's different this time, or
You
maybe
know, in Yeah, in fairness, though, I mean, we have so much going on with the lockdowns, with the Great Reset, with the trucker convoy in Canada, with the election integrity stuff, all this
yeah.
stuff. And I wasn't. I mean, I get like the Russian news from the Lugansk and Donetsk like daily, and
Mm,
the problem, quite frankly, is that you have don't get me wrong, very good people like Basurin, but on a daily basis, he's like, we're being shelled. On a daily basis, he's like,
yeah.
oh, the Ukrainians are getting ready to attack. So I kind of, after 6 or 7 years of Basurin saying that this is imminent, and after 6 or 7 years on the other side of like the NATO type people saying the same, I'm like, you know what? Like maybe this is driving weapons sales or just
Yeah.
hype or I was like, Chicken Little,
Oh,
the sky is falling, and I tuned out.
and dude, as you might expect, I have some people who are sort of more insider on what's happening in the Donbass at any given time. And there's maybe a sort of boy who cried wolf effect where they told me, like, oh man, the big one's coming, dude. The big one's coming. And I've heard the big one's coming already twice already. So I guess it's sort of like, fool me once, shame on me, fool me twice, or wait, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. Well, this is already
Right.
round number 3, and now I'm the one who looks like an idiot. Because this time it actually did happen. So, yeah, so sometimes with this insider information, sometimes it's legit, sometimes it's not. Or, as I was told by a certain person about what's happening with this one, is they were like, the orders with the military to actually be on guard and be prepared and be ready to go in, that's a real order. That's what people told me. Maybe that's the big difference. But you could cancel an order just
Right.
because the president says, "Hey, stand on guard. You've got to be ready. We could be going in at any moment." That doesn't
Hmm.
mean that in 15 minutes they can't cancel it. So that's another reason why I was a bit skeptical. So, yeah, very, very weird. And now the interesting thing, Joaquin, are the different dynamics of how this is being shown. Because I'm a psychopath, I like to watch the YouTube videos of a lot of urbanists. I find the mindset of these urbanist type of people to be very interesting. They're sort
What's
of
an
the
urbanist?
unseen layer of sort of like, what if a broke globalist totalitarian made a YouTube channel? They'd
So
become an
what's
urbanist.
an urbanist?
You don't an urbanist? You're not familiar with that term?
Mm-mm.
Those are people who take city planning to a whole new level. Like they really believe that the cornerstone of society is based on how cities and suburbs and all that are organized through zoning. Basically, it's kind of like if you remember how, was it 5 years ago, someone in Hollywood said something like, it's really us, we in Hollywood, that are changing the world. It's that sort of mentality, self-aggrandizement. I hope that's a word. But they do it with city planning. The father of that is Le Corbusier. And you should really look up his idea, which was to absolutely level Paris to the ground and build like Soviet skyscrapers. It's amazingly stupid. So the history of that goes back a long time, and it's very interesting. It's its own weird culture. But anyways, there's this Hungarian guy who does this, and he's been, for some reason, he has flipped out over this Ukrainian thing. And I watch all of his posts and updates because he only reads specifically some side of kind of like, I guess, insider Ukrainian information. And it's very different. It's very different from the information we get in Russia, especially the capture of Snake Island. Okay. So Fox News and this Hungarian urbanist were reporting that 13 Ukrainian border guards fought to the death to protect Snake Island from the evil Russians. And the Russians told them to stand down. And they basically told them to go F themselves over the radio. And the Russian media shows 82 people supposedly on some boat in Ukrainian uniforms voluntarily surrendering Snake Island. Who do we
So we're
believe?
actually going to get to that, and we're going to show the
Yeah.
footage from Intel Slava. It's been rebranded Intel Slava Z hour. But
Oh yeah, yeah.
we're gonna take a
That's one
look
thing,
at that in a
Joaquin. Do
minute.
you
But
know why? I actually could not find out why the English letter Z. I haven't been able to find that out myself.
me either. Me either.
It's a mystery.
Neither myself. But at whatever how that works in English,
Yeah.
they might have to send me back to English language school. I think that the issue is with the branding. I think it was, and also clarity. So, for example, because the conflict was happening up to recently,
Yeah.
I mean, there's so much footage of conflict from 2015 and 14 that you can fake news can recycle footage from the past.
Dude, that is genius. Now we know. See, I'd have to apologize. I have to apologize to the audience. I've been really sick the last few days. Sort of when Russia's needed me, I've been down, laying down. I'm only feeling a little bit better today. But that must exactly be the reason. Because trust me, as you've seen in our modern times, there's a lot of recycled footage that gets used by our lovely propagandists in the mainstream media and the alternative media too, to maybe a lesser extent. So yeah, it definitely gives a unique look to things. Another thing too, that also on a very practical level, is that everyone's tanks look the same. Because even before this, you know, the Donbass uses Soviet technology. The Ukrainians do too. The Russians have new generation tanks. But to be honest, and interestingly enough, it seems like the Russians have really sent in the old stuff, at least in terms of tanks. New stuff, missiles, old stuff, tanks. So
yeah, I'm seeing a lot of T-34s.
Yeah, so literally everything's the same. And also, interestingly enough, the Russian soldiers are wearing a white armband. Someone might expect them to wear red, being Russia's traditional color. That seems to be more the forces of the Donbass wear the red armband, the Ukrainians yellow, and the Russians white. So that's sort of another aspect to this. So, yeah.
So there's been, I mean, right now it's what, February 26th?
Correct.
It's Saturday. Yes. And we want to give sort of a rundown and review of stuff coming in from, we're going to call it Russian propaganda outlet on which has exploded. You know, I remember when it had 5,000 or 7,000 followers. I think it's at 130, 125,000 followers. We're talking about Intel Slava, now called Intel Slava Z.
Yeah.
All right. Well, it's an interesting branding point. I think the initial thing became popular for global audiences within the past couple years. But I think also it might connect to some of this biological stuff, because you've written about it. I know that Leonid Savin wrote about it in 2014. We just shared that on the New Resistance main channel on Telegram. Leonid Savin, your colleague, my colleague, from Strategic Culture Foundation from 2014. Yeah. And he was writing about the biological weapons lab. And it makes you think very much. You can look at like TV shows like The Walking Dead, and you can look at things like predictive programming, and you can look at how, you know, reports that COVID is causing people to lose their temper very quickly or whatever. So whatever, because they're trying to justify maybe police treating suspected COVID cases with more force if they start saying that COVID positive people lose their minds. Okay, so now you have these biological labs. You have movies like, what is it, World War Z, right, about the zombie apocalypse. So I think it's just branding, and it touches on a lot of things in culture, and it
well, very much so. And also, speaking of COVID, I mean, if you look at the new meme, is they say Putin just cured the world of COVID. Because now that's already been sort of flushed to the background in a lot of ways, which is very interesting, and hopefully that'll be true so we can move forward. But the Biolab
Tim,
network on my...
Actually, and I hate to interrupt, but I think you need to expand upon this, because you're opening up actually a very big theme, which is that when we look at the November World Economic Forum conference in which the Great Narrative book was rolled out, so the Great Narrative book, you had a Columbia University professor who's a World Economic Forum. She said that today that people, that elites in the, we're talking about Atlanticism, that elites today have more trust among each other within the Western Bloc, but people don't have an all-time negative attitude towards their own elites.
Oh,
so she's saying on the positive side, elites are more trusting, which means the chances of war between Western countries at an all-time low. But people are less trusting of their elites. And so then when you look at that, you're going to get into a major conflict in Europe. And what normally is required would be something kind of like Roosevelt or Trump, where you're actually building jobs, where you're actually creating a society that people would in 10 years go fight and defend and die for. But American society is not a society with a lot of credibility, according to this expert from the World Economic Forum. That's not my opinion being expressed right now. I'm rephrasing literally what she said.
Yeah. And if you look at polling across, especially Europe, the percent of people who would be willing to defend their country in some sort of conflict is like 15% of the adult male population. So, I mean, really, Europeans have given up on Europe. It's kind of a weird thing. Why would someone who believes in these sort of globalist positions somehow expect the masses to be passionately patriotic when they need to be, and completely the opposite when they don't need to be? Like they just flick mentalities back and forth like a light switch. It's a very weird thing. Bad,
nationalism good, nationalism, okay, you're a far right, whatever, okay, and flip the switch, okay, now defend your country.
Yeah, and that's exactly what's happening in Europe, because when, especially like with this whole Russia crisis, is, to be honest, who would stand up? Let's just say hypothetically, fantasy, universe, America gets transported away by aliens. It isn't a factor. And Russia gets taken over by some sort of evil entity, right? And they want to attack Europe. Who would stand up? Nobody. Almost nobody.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that people don't understand about the Ukrainian conflict, where I think even the Russian side does a not very good job of portraying this, is just how much everyone hates Kyiv. Because even in a lot of ways, their own nationalists are very disappointed by Kyiv. So there's not a lot of love for Zelensky.
You know what? That's another. We should make a mental note here in this emergency session, a strategy session, about actually what people think in Ukraine, and to kind of explain to people some of the current thinking, because it's not like the most patriotic elements or nationalistic elements in Ukraine actually support Zelensky. They actually are very upset with the ongoing corruption, right? But we'll get into that in a bit, Tim. I think what we should do is look at some of the Russian propaganda, and I want you and I to look at, what looks confirmed or what looks like bullshit, because we know that in the art of war, there's confusion, there's propaganda, and we know that both sides make claims that aren't yet verified. Let's be generous with that.
Oh, absolutely. And especially as we're going to see, I haven't seen these videos. You're the one who's seen them. But I have a strong feeling if we go out to the more eastern half of Ukraine, you're going to see a lot of muddy, flat terrain and houses made of cinder blocks. And though that muddy, flat terrain and houses made of cinder blocks could be anywhere, including vast swaths of Russia itself, you know what I mean? So that's one of the easiest things to fake, is where something is happening. Again, that's kind of hard to prove or disprove. There's not enough. It's very cropped off. Maybe. Surprisingly, actually, I'm very shocked at how much pressure Russia's actually put on Kyiv, the capital. I thought that in sort of more traditional military logic, they might leave that towards the end. But it seems like there's been a very strong push to break Kyiv in order to sort of let the other dominoes fall. The capture of Kherson.
Kherson, you can see from the markings on the tanks that this is happening now.
It looks like it, yeah. The painted up white.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can verify this road, this highway is known outside of or within Kherson. So I'm gonna mark this one legit. That these are the capture. That this is. I mean, the thing is that this doesn't prove the capture. This just
proves they're there.
That they're there.
Yeah. They're moving in.
You have to deconstruct these because the first casualty in war is the truth.
Yeah. And that's why, Joaquin, you probably have also seen videos where in the cities they have captured, they've made a good job of getting someone to film on their telephone how they take down the Ukrainian flag and put up the Russian flag.
that we've seen a few times. Actually, we're gonna see that.
Yeah, because those civic buildings tend to stand out from each other. Let's see, Russian vehicles in a district near Kyiv. Again, there's a lot of places in the Soviet Union that look like that. Very blurry. Again, hard. Well, I can't see what's on the signs either.
Yeah,
because the sun is behind the camera. If we could see the signs,
there, look, that's definitely the gates of Kyiv in the background.
Oh,
like when you from this highway, when you approach Kyiv, that's right there. Those buildings there.
Mm-hmm.
From this side.
Yeah.
But you can't see the signs. But I mean, you know, the casual observer wouldn't be able to verify this.
No. But one thing that can be confirmed is both sides say that Russian forces are near or in Kyiv. So
right. So that's not disputed.
Yeah. Interesting.
So we'll chalk that one up as probably true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, this is a claim that in Cherniv, that the building of the Regional Department of the Ukrainian Intelligence, SBU, is on fire. And you would have to know what that building looks like to determine that. I don't. But there's definitely smoke. And as they say, where there's smoke, there's fire.
Yeah.
But I can't verify this personally, just looking at it.
Well, again, the Russians are claiming that they've been able to hit with their hypersonic weapons a lot of something. I believe the defense ministry said they had something like 819 targets, and they were able to hit all of them. So
is this still showing? Can you see this?
Yeah. Yeah, but again, this is one of those things where we go back to footage, especially if you look at the Iraq War or Afghanistan. You know, the mainstream media says they hit this base filled with these militants. When it's a set of buildings that looks like anything, you know, they could be making carpets there, they could be making concrete. The problem is perhaps there are some high-level experts who can look at an aerial view of a building and tell exactly what its purpose is, but I don't think the twerps at CNN are. Let's see, what does it say? Sumy region.
So that's in the north?
Yeah. Well, Sumy, or I forget how it's said, either Sumy or Sumy, is very near the Russian border. So it's definitely one of the first places that got some action, that's for sure.
Yeah, the problem also is that these aren't dated. So
no, and that doesn't seem to have a lot of the modern markings, but yeah, hard to say.
Well, they're claiming these are Ukrainian BMPs.
Yeah.
The Ukrainian tank, Ukrainian BMP, but I don't see any particular
markings in either way.
See the division marker or the unit marker or some yellow or blue.
Yeah.
And I don't see that, but I mean, this could be a still from a movie. I mean, I'm just saying.
Well, no, not this one. I don't know if they're not going to use whatever that kind of car is in some kind of movie, but yeah, I understand that. So, interesting.
Okay, this one we know.
Yes, modern. The modern markings.
That's the modern marking, and this square. You can see the sign. This is identifiable. So this is happening.
Yeah.
This is 100% true. I don't know what the caption says, but
could you show me the caption?
Yeah.
If it's in Russian.
Caption. It says, tanks of Russian forces in Primorsk. This is the road between Melitopol and Mariupol.
Yeah, yesterday in the news they said that they were able to seize Melitopol. And like we've talked about with you, Joaquin, but not on this program, that Mariupol is going to be essentially the, I wanted to call it a gold mine, but a gold mine is a positive thing. It is going to be the cesspool that's discovered of all the horrible acts that the Ukrainians have inflicted on the people of the Donbass. That's the region that's really where they think the most mass torture and killings were executed. So not only does
Azov was there.
Yes, Azov was there. And not only is it strategically important, as it will go from sort of where the Crimea is to where the Donbass republics are, closing off the sea. So it has strategic value, but I think it's going to have a very significant ideological value. Also, it is one of the most heavily landmined places in the world. And as you know, sometimes it takes a long time to get rid of those landmines. So I don't quite know how the Russians are going to get through all those landmines. But where there's a will, there's a way. And it's probably going to take decades to remove all the danger from that particular region.
Cherniv.
Oh, so Ukrainian intelligence building. This is one.
I mean that's a verifiable thing.
Well, yeah. Well, it has, of course, the
plane-
government symbolism on the
you
top
see
of the
it there.
building. So, yeah, that's definitely a government building in that location on fire. However, is that fire caused by a military strike or was it caused by something else? Because remember, Joaquin, when a rocket hits some
documents.
Because if you look at the facade, the facade is in perfect order. It looks like it's sort of burning from the inside. Perhaps
Or
that
from
was
the roof.
What?
Or from the roof. If
Yeah.
it was like an incendiary or was hit, but they could be burning documents and it got out of control.
Yeah.
Less likely, given that there's a conflict. But
Yeah.
who knows?
Oh, and speaking of unverifiable videos, there have been videos that show people in Ukrainian uniforms en masse burning documents. Of course, can you buy Ukrainian uniforms even in Russia? Yes. Could you film someone burning something from some window using shaky phone to sort of make it look more realistic?
Right.
Yes. But, you know.
I mean, the Russians are master propagandists, but, you know.
I don't know. For how many people in Russia don't seem to like Russia at times or don't believe in it? I don't think so, Joaquin. I'm going to disagree with that statement. So, but anyways. Yeah. Well, this is exactly the type of footage we definitely saw in the 2014 conflict. You know, like where the whole turret of a tank was blown off.
Right.
You know, although the video quality is better.
Right.
You know, these Russian-made cell phones are fantastic, Joaquin, that have come into being since 2014. So there's a lot of pixels, so it's probably a newer telephone, meaning it's probably a more modern footage, but still very familiar.
Yeah, I mean, you can look, sometimes you can see from, you know, men's wear doesn't change as fast as women's wear, but
no. But also,
Yeah, I mean,
Joaquin,
this
remember, even before this, the situation in Ukraine economically has been pretty desperate. You know, although fashion does change, and even cheap Chinese fashion changes, especially, you know, like whatever popular video game comes out, they just slap that video game on T-shirts. So there is some truth to that, but the last few years have not been a great time to go clothing shopping for average people in Ukraine. That's for darn sure.
this is supposed to be, they're claiming this is from earlier.
Melitopol. Now the city's completely under. Yeah, again, unfortunately, this is a place I've never been, so I can't really tell you just by eye, but, oh boy. Yep.
This is in the Donetsk region, though, isn't it?
Yeah. Ooh, hold on. Let me confirm that. That's something easily
Melitopol
confirmable. I think
is like
Melitopol
north
is
of-
just outside of it, to be honest.
It's between Donetsk and Mariupol, as I remember.
Yeah,
but I-
Melitopol, yeah, it's on the way to Mariupol, but
Yeah.
Mariupol is actually within the region. Melitopol is not.
Okay. but
And the
it's on
place we
way, but
mentioned,
out of the region.
the place we mentioned earlier, Primorsk, is is perfectly between them,
Okay.
halfway.
So then so I wonder if these units would have come through. Most probably they came through Donetsk.
No, I would say probably not. They probably
Through
actually came
Crimea?
from the Crimea. Because they haven't been able to close the gap between the Donbass region and this city of Melitopol. So
As
it's
of
probably
Saturday. That's a pretty huge strategic goal.
yeah, if with the Russians, when they claim they've taken a city, they're gaining about something like 25 or so kilometers a day, which in war is an absolutely massive amount of territory.
It's a blitzkrieg. Yeah.
So, and if you look at the, let me get on, at least on my screen, you won't be able to see it, but I can at least explain it. So for example, from about the border of, I wonder if it's going to work, or it's going to be silly.
You can share it with my Telegram, and then it'll pop up. I can put it here.
Well, to get to Melitopol from the border of Crimea, you're looking at about 90 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
And then to get from there to Primorsk, I hate the way they do the new ruler on Yandex. It is so frustrating. It used to be so easy to use. It's about 66. And then going towards Mariupol is about another 180 or so. So yeah, so actually it's probably more. The Donbass army is covering about 25 kilometers a day. The Russian army looks like it's roughly, I don't know, 60 kilometers a day, which shows the speed at which everything is going. So
That's impressive. Look at here. Look, we can see
yeah,
confirmation of how we're saying this is organized. He says Z will soon meet V.
I see.
So these are the different formations, I think, from the different starting points from where they began operations.
Yeah.
And these are supposed to be Chechen units now on their way heading to Ukraine. But
if you can pause the video, you see that building that's in the middle there?
Yeah.
That is sort of a homage to the ancient types of towers that they built in the Caucasus Mountains. It's sort of inspired by that architectural design, which means it shows that this is definitely in a location in the Caucasus Mountains. That
you're still in Chechnya.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't really see what's written around because in Chechnya, I'll put it this way: they have a lot of public propaganda. So usually when you're in Chechnya, there's usually something in the background that's kind of propagandist. Whether it's good or bad, that's up to you. But I'm just saying that's the way it is.
I mean, look at this building. It has like these kind of castle, medieval castle sort of looking things on it.
No, the one behind it, that tower.
Yeah, I know this. Yeah. I know what you're saying with this, but I'm saying look at how this one's very interesting.
Well, it's very unique. Yeah. So
I think it's kind of cool that they're using the this line of like Ladas, but it reminds me of like the Toyota trucks, like the ISIS formations.
Something like that. Well, they're cheap. I mean, each one of those costs the consumer $15,000. I guess if you order 150 of them at a time, they're even cheaper.
Probably $5,000 a piece new.
Yeah, they're UAZ Patriots, as the Russians call them UAZ, but that sounds weird in English. But anyways,
this is. I don't know if we're getting some latent. Okay, here we go. Abandoned armored personnel carriers and vehicles of the armed forces of Ukraine in Bucha, where there was a battle today.
So far, nothing.
Yeah, so far, nothing. I don't know what we're looking for. Abandoned personnel carriers.
Yeah. That's a Toyota, I think. I don't know, Joaquin. Not seeing anything yet. Wait, maybe we're getting closer now.
Okay, yeah. There's on the left and on the right.
Well, considering all the doors are just sort of left flopping open, that usually doesn't seem to be standard policy.
Yeah, and you can tell from the colors using that kind of weird shade, that tactical, I call it tactical, like that tactical light beige that Ukrainians use. And you can see the blue lines there are marking it as Ukrainian. I'm going to help people see that again, if possible or not. But
a lot of stuff knocked over.
One thing that people can see when they look at some of the Ukrainian vehicles, even if they're, post-Soviet, Russian-made or Ukrainian-made Soviet style, they painted a lot of them in a lighter, like this kind of light beige.
Yeah.
That matches some of the American-made uniforms, because some of the forces, especially like volunteer battalions, began to be equipped more with the kind of actually like surplus from U.S. stuff from the Iraq. So it's kind of weird to see some of this tactical stuff, but yeah, the Ukrainian volunteer battalions are really into tactical, and let's see here. So this is a claim from yesterday. This would have been 5:30 Belgrade time.
Well,
so
that's from Kharkov, and Kharkov is probably surprisingly, there's two cities that it's actually very surprising they weren't able to start an uprising like the Donbass. Well, Odessa's far away, but Odessa is an extremely pro-Russian area.
This could be fake. This could be what's that game? That battle, that war simulator game that kids
Call
play?
of Duty?
No. There's another one. Anyway, this could be CGI, I guess, in layman's terms.
Well, yeah, some sort of glowing effect over the horizon is of course very possible to fake. I don't know if it's quite necessary, but Kharkov would definitely be one of the first cities to try to take, because they should meet very little resistance from locals, if any.
See, this could also be from that game. See, the game allows you to set up these situations, and there's an editor mode and everything, and kind of.
I don't know, man. That looks pretty good. Games always.
I know it does, but it's the present year, dude.
Anything's possible.
And the flare effects are a little bit too flary. I'm just saying. That's just how games work. I forget what the game is called, but.
Well, if we're looking at massed rockets, I mean, that's been a big part of Soviet and now Russian war gear for quite some time. So that's also something that shouldn't be really surprising to see, So, interesting. Got anything else there, or did we kind of look?
There's a lot. I mean, I just, we want to
take a little break and get back to reality here. Okay.
Well, let's see. I mean, we have. You could go. I want to see ones that. I want to skip down to what they're claiming is happening kind of right now. So now we're jumping to today, and this is going to be 12:15 in the afternoon is going to be 1:15. So all the time markers on this, because I'm in Belgrade, so you just want to add an hour for Kyiv. For you in Moscow, you subtract an hour.
Yeah.
Before entering Kyiv, we discuss with the special forces firefights in the city, which are carried out by armed civilians. The fighters joke, quote, "Well, now we will stop it. It will become easier, less chaos. Everyone will shoot at us and not at each other."
That's based on the sort of rumor from Russian media that in Kyiv they've gotten desperate and started just sort of handing out guns to everyone. But of course, not everyone used their gun in particularly the way to defend the motherland.
Yeah, now there's some looting and armed robberies going on, and the police are preoccupied with like an invasion or whatever.
Yeah, I bet the police are pretty darn preoccupied right now. So yeah.
Oh, look at this. That's the Pravi sector. That's the Bandera flag.
Military base is being destroyed in Chernigov.
Yeah, so people who don't know, I'm going to pause it. So you have the Ukrainian flag, but this flag next to it with the red on top and the black, that's a neo-Nazi flag.
Yeah.
We know that already. That's if you don't know, you don't know, but if you know, you know. That's Pravi sector or Bandera.
Yeah, exactly. Publicly displayed.
Yeah, because they're open about it. That's the thing that a lot of people don't know. See, that's the problem, is that I've been called a Nazi, you've been called a Nazi. Everyone in the world right now who's vaguely patriotic or vaguely against the New World Order is being called a neo-Nazi. And then we have this freaking conflict where there's literal Nazis.
Yeah, NATO-backed real Nazis who are completely open about it and shameless. Zero criticism.
Like actual Sig Heil, actual,
Tiki Torch party.
Yeah.
Yeah. Spread a fake about the alleged defeat.
So now they're claiming that the information that Ukraine spread is fake about the alleged defeat of the Rosgard column in the Kyiv region. In fact, the defeated column belongs to the Nacgvardia, National Guard of Ukraine. This is evidenced by the brands of trucks that got on the footage. So you can see this is written by a Russian that got on the footage. These are Mazbogdan, which are used only in Ukrainian armed formations. In addition, fragments of license plates with the letter designations AZ indicate that the cars belong to the Northern Regional Department, the headquarters of Zhytomyr.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the license plates are always a key telling thing, because Russian plates have a sort of unique look.
Yeah, and Ukrainian plates look like EU plates.
Yeah.
They have the little blue stripe on the left.
And I guess for those who are watching, if you're interested, Russian plates to the left have the number, and to the right they have sort of like a sub number, and that sub number tells what state it's from. Kind of like how in America we have different states have different plates. In Russia, they're all the same, only the sub number is different.
Okay. Yeah, in Serbia, it's the city code are two-letter initials on the left, and then on the right is like a random number that progresses, with each car registration upwards.
Mm.
So I don't know. Do you want to read this for us? Nah, never mind.
That's a lot to translate there, but yeah.
Let's see. This is supposed to be a Tochka U missile system of the Ukrainian army, which would be identical to a Russian system, I think.
Yeah.
The tactical missile systems have been attacking Donetsk for several days. So they're just claiming this. This is unverifiable from where we stand.
Well, yeah, that's really hard to tell what's going.
This could have been from the 2015 conflict.
Yeah.
Or from any little scrimmage that happened in between.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's yeah.
Okay. Chechens. They're really promoting this Chechens thing.
Well, Chechnya itself is promoting it. Like I said earlier, that the Chechens really want to show that they're part of Team Russia and that they're in it to win it, and that their fighters are awesome. And it's I don't know what to say, but they want in. They want in on the action, and I think Kadyrov wants to make sure that his guys don't become lazy, that they don't become this sort of fighting force that sits around giving each other medals all day long.
Yeah, I was invited to speak to a Chechen panel in Grozny, and I ended up doing it via Skype because I couldn't get to Grozny in time.
Yeah.
And my message was not that they needed to hear it from me. I'm not going to bust a Kenny Powers here, but what my message was, don't let the West transform your Islam into some victim ideology.
Yeah. And also, one thing that would be good is for a lot of these guys to come back with the real first-person view of what actually happened there, to spread the word, especially to the neighboring republics and all that, sort of the eyewitness factor. So, yeah.
It's important because of the history of Chechnya and Russia in the 90s and what happened. And, you have countries like Dagestan, or you have some of these minorities, maybe in Georgia, and to dispel rumors and to show, because we know that NATO and even Ukraine tried to make overtures and connections through Islamic fundamentalism, and to actually try to expand ISIS, Al-Qaeda once again, where for the first time with ISIS, but basically this Al-Qaeda continuum into the Caucasus is an ongoing issue. So Odessa shooting and explosions towards Pskov. That looks boring.
That's some sound effects in the distance kind of video there.
Yeah, so anyone could record that. And then this is just, it is reported. I consider that.
Yeah, it's always questionable.
Yeah, nonsense normally.
Mm-hmm.
But so where you stand right now, I mean, we hear a lot of different things. What's your understanding of the situation in Kyiv right now?
From what I understand is it is going to be a little tough. The Russian reporting of it is that I should say the Russian reporting. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation said that they have footage and all that, more footage, the word of the day, footage of the Ukrainians really trying to put all of their artillery and installations and move things near civilians to make it look like the Russians are trying to kill civilians, which is, of course, a violation of the rules of war there, the whole Geneva Convention and all that stuff. And so I think when they say that, I think they're going to encounter some trouble in Kyiv because in a pretty massive city that's pretty densely populated, how are they going to cut the Banderites out of there without taking out a lot of other people? There was even footage today of some, I guess, rocket. It didn't seem to explode, but it hit a high-rise building. So obviously that killed somebody because there's no way that in those 14, 16, 18 apartments that were destroyed that no one was home, right? That they died for nothing, okay? So the question is really how are they going to take Kyiv? I think is sort of the big question of the day. The rest, though, of all the territory they're taking, and this is important for the audience to understand, Joaquin, the rest of this territory east of the Dnieper River and going south along the Black Sea towards Transnistria and Moldova, all these people hate Kyiv. Most of them are pro-Russian, and even the ones that are not going to be passionate enough to do anything about it. And that's one of the reasons why everything is falling like dominoes, you know? And I really do predict that, I'll put it this way, it would be stupid for Russia, if and when they take Kyiv, to push west. Because once you get into places like Zhytomyr, I think that's how it's pronounced, and beyond, that's when you're getting into the place where everyone hates the Russians. They're a very small percent of the population. That's where you'd get into this sort of like a potential Afghanistan situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, getting bogged down.
So so if I were in the Russian government, I would say we take Kyiv, we take everything east of the Dnieper, everything along the southern I want to say border with the ocean. That's not the proper word. Along the coastline up until Transnistria, and then we're going to sit.
Well, I had a stupid idea 7 or 8 years ago that I tried to promote into the sphere and hope it would land on the right ears. To solve Ukraine is not that Donbass and Lugansk separate, but that you recognize Galicia and that Galicia is its own country.
Oh, yeah.
And let all the Banderists have and it can be a little micro state, like the last Nazi regime or something like that.
Well, yeah, that's actually a very good idea because their narcissism would like that. I know their narcissism on the one hand would be like, we want to take all of Ukraine. And to be honest, Joaquin, some of their propaganda, which makes its way through Russia, is they really thought with this revolution that, like how Kyiv is the birthplace of all of Russia, right? And I went up, I believe, to Novgorod, and from Novgorod, maybe, I think there was some other phase, but then eventually it wound up in Moscow, and Eurasia belongs to sort of Moscow, right, from that point on. Well, a lot of these people, these Banderites, really thought that, thinking in these terms, that we're going to bring the power back to Kyiv of all of Eurasia, that essentially they would be able to build a sort of new empire with the same footprint as the Soviet Union. I know that
Based
sounds...
in Kyiv.
Starting with Kyiv as the epicenter of it. Like everything coming full circle. So that sounds nuts, but at least the propaganda for that is real. Okay?
Well, you and I mean, maybe you knew her, but I used to communicate before the war in 2014.
Yeah.
For a number of years with I guess it became, Pravi Sector was rebranded something else, but when it was Pravi Sector, she became the English language Minister of Information. Was that Elena Semeniaka?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you...
No, I'm sorry, I don't know.
Dealt with her? Anyway, well, she's probably Ukraine's leading Heideggerian philosopher.
Oh.
Probably the most well-read Heideggerian, most well-studied Heideggerian philosopher in Ukraine. But she got tied up with this Nazi stuff when the war started, and I haven't talked to her much since, as people would maybe imagine.
Yeah.
But but I was getting information. At any rate, they had this funny idea, and they've been pursuing it, that they would transform the Visegrad group, or this Middle Europa idea of actually restoring. And I know this is crazy because you're involving Banderists.
Yeah.
See, they thought that they were like leaping the paradigm, because they thought that, hey, Ukrainian or Banderist resistance to the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, there was a lot of violence between Polish nationalists and Ukrainian nationalists.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of which, Bandera was the one who committed a lot of that. But anyway.
Yeah, a lot of war crimes and crimes against humanity against Poles, ethnic Poles in the parts of Ukraine that were part of the Soviet Union, that had used to be part of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth up until 1795 for people who are into the history. And so the question then was, how do we get NATO, which had been really, this is the Rumsfeld doctrine, right, of what's called New Europe, and the concept was the Baltic to Black Sea corridor, or the Visegrad group of basically Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia. They wanted to get Belarus somehow in there through a color revolution against Lushenko. Would be nice, but Ukraine. And then they had different visions or versions. One goes to the Black Sea for sure. They had some other crazy idea of that their little empire would go through Croatia to the Adriatic. So they have different.
Well, and Joaquin is a little bit of a conspiracy theory proof in quotes. You know, the flags the color revolutionaries were using in Belarus was the flag of
a Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. There you go. So they wore their mission on their sleeve there. So you said that maybe we should create this Galicia sort of microstate. I think we should feed into a much more reasonable group of people who also have a little bit of an inferiority complex and some narcissism. Polish nationalists. Give it to Poland. Make Lvov Polish again, baby.
Like to troll them, you mean? Like to
this is right now. Putin has already been accused of somehow trying to offer Poland to take over big chunks of Ukraine. I would do it openly because Poland, Hungary, and I believe Romania, I could be wrong on that audience, but definitely Poland for sure, and Hungary, have some territorial claims over the western part of Ukraine. And why not, ironically, allow the Poles to partition someone else? And I think that would create an interesting dynamic. I don't know if it would exactly rip NATO apart, but it would really motivate the Poles to pursue their own agenda. Because if you also look at one of the great tragedies of history, I saw recently a demographic map of what the population of Lvov, in Russian it's Lvov, now it's Lviv, whatever. Lvov up until about World War II, there were a lot of Polish people there. After World War II, not a lot. So tough times for Poland and the Polish population.
Real tough times for Poland. So you're saying to a repartition of Ukraine, and that Russia could, rebuild some of its
because dude, we cannot have you. The one thing is, I see what you're saying about this the Galicia thing, but the problem is Russia still can't live with a bunch of neo-Nazi psychopaths next to them. The Poles don't like Russia either, but that dislike isn't psychopathic. It's not.
Right.
Like, Poland's not going to think we have to get them with a nuclear strike.
Right.
They're not at that level, and I don't think they ever will be, especially now that they can sort of see that Russia, the whole trend of postmodernism in the West is disgusting to people in Poland. Mm-hmm. So that's made Russia look less bad. I don't want to create some sort of illusion that now Poland is on Russia's side. Not even close.
Right.
But now Russia just doesn't look like Satan. It looks just sort of like some kind of lesser demon that's far away and doesn't really need to be particularly worried about. So whereas especially
like,
after
Mateusz Pisorski, Polish academic, he was actually the dean of the Department of History of a University of Warsaw Department of History.
Yeah.
And he was promoting that Russia and Poland should have closer ties. And he was charged with espionage, he was arrested on espionage for China. And
China.
Yeah, he was held for a number of years without formal charges, and his status is still, he was released, at some point, but he's kind of can't leave the country. Maybe he can now.
Well, the thing is that, Joaquin, that does sound kind of bad. I can kind of understand how Poland, there's a reason why Poland is a little bit paranoid after having World War I and World War II fought on their territory, not caused by them. I can understand the paranoia. But say that happened to someone, the same thing happened, but it was in Banderistan, like the country you proposed creating, he'd be dead. His body would be found in a river.
Actually, you would know Pisorski, because he was very.
Yeah, I've talked to him. I've talked to him. Mm-hmm. Back
Manuel,
when
died last year.
Back when Manuel, before the death of Manuel Ochsenreiter, they were doing a podcast and they had me on. So I talked to him once. Yeah.
So Poland definitely, they have their corrupt elites were trying to appeal to what they thought was Trump's ego.
Yeah.
So the thing is that Trump doesn't have the ego that people think he has, or they can't you can't flatter someone who's used to being flattered. Maybe is more accurate. And so Poland was like trying to get this NATO thing going in Poland, and Trump was not actually a fan of that, to set the record straight.
Yeah.
And they said, well, we're going to name it Trump, or Trump Base or something, or it's going to be called Fort Trump.
Yeah.
And Trump's like, still no.
He's like, I have multi-billion-dollar businesses named after me. It's cool,
yeah.
bro.
Yeah.
You know.
Didn't work out. But so then you have Poland. Well, I mean, maybe you could help people understand in international relations the idea of a buffer state, because it's not like you want to have two conflicting zones nose to nose. You want to have countries in like a corridor of countries in between that have decent, warmish relations with both.
Yeah. Because
right?
it really helps deflate potential hostilities. You know, a true buffer state would in a way be North Korea, because it has really kept the ability for the United States to have its bases like right on China's borders. So North Korea's existence means that there's really no land connection between NATO and China proper, and they like that. Mm-hmm. And that's allowed North Korea to kind of go along. I would say that the real benefit... The real benefit to a buffer zone in Europe, be it like something like the Visegrad Group, is that, to be honest, I think we're seeing in the EU that Central Europe, as they call themselves, they really don't like the whole LGBT thing. They don't really like the hardcore liberalism or postmodernism. And in a way, I think that we're seeing there's sort of two different value systems about what the EU is growing, and they're geographic. And so in some ways the EU might benefit by sort of creating the buffer zone of non-believers like Poland and Hungary and and Slovakia and all these other backwards nations might be best served as being that buffer, because if the EU is going to continue on, there's going to be a real ideological battle, and the two sides and their two visions are very different. I mean, Viktor Orban's EU is a very, very different one from Boris Johnson's. Although they're out now, so should I say Macron's?
To the conflict, though, in the real time here, now we're at a 2:05 Kyiv time.
Yeah. Well, one thing, Joaquin, let's take a look at maybe like 2 or 3 more videos, then I got to go. My voice box is failing me.
This is the end.
I'm still very ill.
We're just going to set this one up and look. So the text is claiming, while there's no footage of downed Russian planes, and I haven't seen Ukrainian claims to verify that or not, they're saying this is definitely a downed Ukrainian plane. Yeah, well, I see the Ukrainian flag that someone put in text on the thing.
It says in Russian, like, God Almighty, stop this.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I don't know other than smoldering.
Mm-hmm. Well, we can definitely say that Russia's attained very quickly both sea and air superiority. That's something that happened within the first day.
What does that say?
It says something like, oh God, stop this.
Yeah. Lord, Gospodi.
Mm.
Lord. Yeah. Eto. Huh. Yeah, I don't, there's so much coming through. And of course, this is how real footage looks that people catch. They might have missed the first big thing that caught their attention. They pull their phone out and you might see what's happening right after, whatever caught their attention. So a lot of them are sort of just, waste of time, right?
Yeah.
Or irrelevant little things of minutia, of irrelevant detail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but there's definitely a military operation going on.
But that vehicle looked like an ambulance, to be honest. So I don't quite know what's going on there.
There's definitely the large possibility that there lots of reports of shooting between soldiers outside of Kyiv. There's been lots of movements on the highways surrounding Kyiv. There's been evidence established of anti-air unit setup in residential apartment zones in Kyiv by the Ukrainian forces.
Yeah.
Something people don't maybe not understand is that the way that these apartments are set up is that you have an apartment building, and then on the bottom floor is like its own little stores and little shops and everything. And then you don't really have streets between them, but you have like these open plazas and children's playgrounds that connect what are called blocks. And these different blocks are residential, high density residential housing.
So well, the only positive thing I can say is that the Soviets, when they designed this type of architecture, specifically designed it so if one building burns, they don't catch fire. So you'll notice that unlike in, say, I don't know, Hong Kong, buildings are very spaced out. Russia's kind of like the big Midwest of the world here. And so hopefully fire won't be too big of an issue unless the Kyiv regime changed those policies later. So, but one thing I could say, Joaquin, I just want to say, we'll get to my closing thoughts, and how about your closing thoughts? My closing thoughts are, for everyone who's listening to this, you can't forget that one of the things that's guiding Russia's actions is that, whether you believe this or not, at least officially, Russians see the Ukraine as an inalienable part of itself. And this idea that there are these separate Ukrainian people as being false. They're essentially all Russians, just Russians of a different type, much in the same way that in America we're Americans, but they're Southerners. Sort of like that. They're sort of they have a twang in there, the way they won't talk and all that stuff, but they're not a completely different ethnicity that's needs its own nation state. And that's really what's guiding a lot of this. And so Russia has the challenge of, how do we break this evil Nazi state without killing all of our own people? That's the real challenge.
The mentality. And the thing is that in Russia, Russians are not all the same. So you have all these regions that are in the Russian Federation today as it exists, and they have their stereotypes about each other and their little dialects and their different slangs. And the Ukrainian language is almost kind of like an outgrowth over 100 and something years of various slangs that under the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth were kind of isolated and a little bit like its own little evolutionary path. But for the past 100 and something years has been more integrated with Russia. So then you have that aspect where Americans or Westerners are talking about Russians and they're talking about Ukrainians, but the differences between some Russians are even more great than the difference between some Russians and some Ukrainians.
All right, man. What are your closing thoughts?
You know what? The honest truth is that I want this to come to an end quickly.
Me too.
I want to see I want to see the results of the coup in 2014 overturned. I'm not a UDA patriot. I'm not happy to see any losses of military guys on the Ukrainian side. This is an economic draft. Most of the guys don't want to be in the army. They're getting paid $150 a month. Unemployment for youth is at 60-70% in Ukraine because of the corruption of the Ukrainian government and the policies of the EU, which doesn't want Ukraine, and this military adventurism that NATO has put into Ukraine, but NATO doesn't want the liability of Ukraine. And I feel horrible that millions of Ukrainian people have been lied to about the possibility of genuine autonomy and independence as a country, when they're basically being groomed for the disaster that we see unfolding. And I'm not happy. I'm praying for Ukrainians who are the ones, innocent civilians who are the ones in jeopardy right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I mentioned, there's that now probably going to be infamous footage of that high-rise apartment that got hit by something. And all those people had nothing to do with this. Wasn't a military target. It was obvious a mistake. Maybe the Ukrainians will feel it was done on purpose. Well, they really wanted to, they could have blown up the whole building, but died for nothing. And that's the real tragedy. A lot of people are going to die for pretty much nothing in the upcoming days. But so the faster we pull the Band-Aid, hopefully the quicker the pain will end. Anyways, emergency session of the strategy session is over.